Hey, what's going on, guys? KillerMiller here, and today I'm bringing you guys a video on a professional team breakdown. So I've done quite a few professional just solo queue players breakdown, and I've done like not solo queue players, but just solo queue, just like VODs of Tens, Brax, and Skadoodle. But I want to do a full team breakdown this time, and talk about a lot of the stuff that goes into full-on team play and high-level just organized play effectively. Because I know a lot of people just in solo queue, it's just always chaotic. Even at high level, it's still chaotic. So it'd be kind of cool to see a little bit more structure and stuff like that. A few disclaimers up first. I'm using this pen tool over here. You'll see on the top right of my screen. So if something is a little scuffed, I'm just trying to get used to this. And that's why. And then also, I just to talk about a few basic things that it kind of entail what changes pro play. The first and most clear and obvious is that there's strats. There's specific comps for specific reasons, and then obviously very small things are huge in these sort of games, or in the pro games, because in a solo queue game at any level you get a pick like just at the start of the round. It's like that's obviously good, but it doesn't just lead to a round win, right? Now in this game, in the pro level, picks are huge, so you'll see a lot of quirky little plays that people go for where they try to get an early pick because of how big it is and how much pressure it alleviates on the map. We'll talk about all that when it comes up, but just a few basic things to discuss, because there's going to be a lot of things I'm going to kind of pause on that might not seem big, but there is a reason behind of why I think it's very, very big, and it can affect around quite a bit, right? So yeah, I think that's all. If there's anything else I forgot, I'll just kind of touch on it as we go. This is also my first time doing this, like actual pro stuff, so hopefully it doesn't last too long. I'd like to make this actually a bit shorter, so I'd actually skip a few rounds on each side just so I can kind of get to the bulk of it. But anyways, we'll kind of get to that whenever it comes. I'll just kind of see how it's going, and cool, let's jump right into it. So, like I said, keep in mind that things at the start, people go for picks a lot, and I actually think we see that working into B here, right? So this is effectively the start of map pressure, right? So what these players are trying to do is effectively have this entire left side of the map cut off, or at least what I would imagine they do, right? So right now it's just default, like the map's cut across. What they're running is default, is the attack side. I think Envious, yeah, Envious is attacking, right? I don't want to screw that up. We'll just say attackers. Yeah. Envious. So right now they're running a default. So what a default is, for basic understanding, is you just want to figure out where everybody's playing their agents and how they're playing them, how they're using their utility, if they're pushing, all that good stuff, right? So this is really all that is. Because notice we have people set up on all sides of the map, which is splitting it across, right? Playing on split, quirky. Anyways, so yeah, that's kind of what's going on here, right? And so these players that are pushing over here are trying to disrupt that, right? So let's say, just hypothetically, they get this kill on Omen. They now, all the attackers have to work with in reality is like this. This is it, just this chunk of the map, right? So all these, the defenders, we'll click blue for the defense side, are giving themselves, instead of just this line, it's now going to be like this. That's all technically, because they don't have control of A yet. I guess they kind of could because they're not watching cross, but he'll be spotting it, the Omen will. So that's what they're going for here. And this is what I was talking about, how big these opening picks are, right? And so that was more so just for the discussion part of it, but notice how right here they don't actually catch the Omen out, and so this is a massive play out of the Omen to actually sit here. This is why you like to run defaults on the early rounds. Maybe not, well, not so much. You can always obviously just run a dedicated strat like a 5-man push. That's super coordinated, and it can usually work because the utility's low for the defending side, which I think is actually pretty underrated to try and stuff. But I feel like because it's so early in the scene and just all that stuff, people haven't really gotten a grasp of how teams play. So running defaults a lot is probably what we'll see. But anyways, point is, now pressure has now been super alleviated, right? Because what happens is not only is B site theoretically open because there's 2 people dead and there's no way they're playing like 3 or 4 there. It forces these players to move, right? Because you can think now, right, what they have was 2, 1, 2 set up on the map, right? Now there's 0 over here, so they're going to have to switch it out. So it's now going to be set up 1, 1, 1. That's a terrible one. Because the reason why is because they still have to have eyes on all parts of the map. Now they could play it, and you will see this quite a bit in pro teams, to give up specific parts of the map because there's a lot of coordination. They can actually work together to retake like stuff like this. Because in solo queue that's not going to happen a lot, but that's kind of the example, right? And so you can also work this out. I want to touch on this fast because if we haven't even really gotten into the VOD at all, and I'm just talking a lot, but you can actually use these plays to your advantage, right? Because the obvious thing would be let's just rush B, right? Because there's dead players there. But at the high level, you can start to predict and expect people to rotate off. So we can expect the stage to push, and we can expect an A player to move off. So maybe they can actually rotate over to A now as 5. Obviously that stuff I don't really know what's gonna happen with all that, but the idea is still kind of stands. Like it just the idea is right. So cool. Anyways, nice little attempt to make a play there. But they just ended up overwhelming her, and there's not much they can do. I actually don't like this wall. Now because I take that back. The wall's fine. So let's talk about this wall. I hate when people do this in freaking solo queue, and I hope that doesn't happen a lot in pro play. It makes sense this round, and I'll tell you why. But because so the way this map is designed, I don't want to get into the map design yet, but basically the reason this right side is walled here is because you want to cut off the heaven. You want to allow for a safe cross. But I think it's a lot more valuable to actually save wall for CT. And then the reason you do that is because if you have a smoke agent, specifically a brimstone, but Omen works too, to double smoke heaven here and here, which there's one there. But if there's 2, then that actually cuts off heaven completely, right? Obviously they can play under, but that's easy to trade. If somebody's playing under heaven, that's a very easy kill, so that's worth it for the attackers, right? So I think it's better to save wall, because what happens is if you wall this right side, you cross 9 times out of 10, maybe not so much at pro play because there's more coordination, but especially in solo queue, this has happened to literally everybody. I know it for a fact. You all get stuck in this backs part right here, and you're just screwed. Like, what do you do? There's nothing you can do about it, right? You just get stuck there. So I think it's better to save the wall. Now, obviously, I think it's okay here because they don't have heaven control. Whatever. But in theory, that's kind of like, or they don't have the smokes to cut off heaven, right? But in general, that's kind of something you want to pay attention to, right? And so they should be setting up in a default post positions or plant positions. They should realize, hey, we need eyes on all different spots. What's blocked, what's not, all that good stuff. And so you can go for quirky little plays like this, where you actually are still having eyes and it catches the enemy off guard, right? Like this Jet had no idea that the enemy was up here. Obviously, he just whiffed, and that's fine. Well, it's not fine, but that's what happened. And yeah, so that's just kind of a basic retake. It's gonna be really weird to actually break this down quite a bit because I don't have control over spectating people. I have to just watch what they've seen. That's why I'm looking at the map quite a bit. But anyways, the idea is still gonna stand, right? So yeah, then they just kind of get into basic trades, and yeah, that's what happens. So that's pistol. So good round by them. Like I said, the idea of pressure was going to be, or alleviating pressure is what they wanted to do. And that's kind of what they tried, and it just didn't work. So anyways, we're going to actually skip ecos as well because, like I said, I don't want to be cut too short on time. So that's going to be our plan. If there's actually an eco that's 1, we can go back and like watch over it. But I think I've like skimmed through this VOD, and the majority of them were just, every eco was not, nobody wanted an eco. I'm pretty sure, but we'll see. So cool. All right, same thing here. I think we're going to see a very similar setup as just the default, right? So yeah. Now notice how the defenders are actually giving heaven here, and they're actually swapping their cipher over to A. So the reason they're doing this is because this is allowing them to put 2 B side, because the typical setup, at least in just solo queue and pretty much in pro play as well, is you're going to have a sentinel, specifically cipher, because of how powerful it's at B. So you're going to have 1, 2 B heaven, and then 2 A, right? Or potentially 1 and 1 here and 1 here, depending on how they take mid. That's like a very typical setup. But I think the reason they do this is because that they know that I'm assuming they've watched some VODs, that they know that NBS wants to take over mid here. And so they're just going to give it. They're going to save their util and use it for more useful spots and play retakes. And that's kind of what's going to happen here. So that's why there's nobody playing B. And that's what we see. Or nobody playing heaven, not B, excuse me. And I think a lot of the reason that they put the cipher over on A is because it allows them to play 2 B site instead of 1 and like 2 heaven. Because you're giving it, it's going to allow for easier plays around the B pushers and also easier control of this, right? Because they can have the Omen or the cipher rotate over, and they have flanks just covered effectively with all the util, and they don't have to worry about people directly pushing A, all that good stuff. Anyways, we don't need to talk about too much of it. But anyways, so that's kind of what's going on here, right? So let's just watch what happens. I forget how slow this is. So she finally decides to use her wall, and that's okay. Now notice how, like I said, the cipher, this is why this is a decent setup. He has the ramp covered with this, and we have the doubling up over here. Because right now with this wall, they know that the attackers now have free reign on rope room to go towards A, which is why they have both swapped off site to double up. Because all Cypher has to do is check his cam periodically to see if there's a cross, and or just straight up watch the cross right here, and then also he has a tripwire, so they can't just run out site. Decent setup. I think there could be some flaws in this. If this is ever picked up on by the attackers, they could just jump, they could fly through this anyways. But obviously with the way the round's playing out, they kind of know that they're mid and that sort of a thing. But anyways, just some basic stuff to touch on. I don't really want to do too much like improvising from the fact of like I think that they should be doing this. I just want to break down what's happening more so and talk about why. And then if it's like an obvious answer, then I'll discuss it. But that's kind of what's going on. So anyways, like I said, they gave mid, blah blah blah. Pretty cool, pretty unique. Catches this player off guard. That's good. I'm trying to think of what's anything unique here. I mean, not really. It's just there's just gunfights. Very bad by the Omen here. He should have known that. I think he was just trying to. It's expecting a 1v1, but it wasn't a 1v1, right? So at this point, we were kind of starting to get a grip of what's going on in the round, right? So obviously the Cypher and Omen weren't just throwing, but their point was this is another idea of map pressure, but more attack side, right? Because the last time I was talking about map pressure, when I was talking about alleviating it, that was it goes into both sides, but it was mainly for the defense side, because that's how you can rotate early off of that, right? And so that's kind of what happened here. They thought that because they were pushing here, hey, the rest of the team's pushing, but in reality, they're all gonna go B because they've pulled off so many rotations. These two players have created a lot of pressure by doing that, and so it pulled them over this way. And so because of that, they're actually allowed to get a good little B push off here. Now notice how they realize they're not instantly pushing. But this Omen peaks or he checked cam or something, and they're actually not out. And Jet's like, I need to go back because at this point they could actually be out B, which is kind of what happens. So they don't instantly run because they don't want to completely give away their position. But the idea still stands. Everybody's still walking around. And that's what's going on. So now that they're starting to move, and it's like, okay, now they're setting up for B. We see the rotates. They get the wall, and they actually get a good plant off. So it's now... Oh, it's 3v3. Was there... Oh, okay, this kill just happened. Let me back up a second. I kind of missed that. Okay, so he ults this guy, and then I think he ends up opping, yeah, him. So that makes sense. So now it's a 3v3. So this was I don't want to say this was necessarily bad by Complexity, but it was definitely not a great idea because what they were trying to do is they're like, this happens in literally all levels of play no matter what. They're like, we are up, we have a man advantage, let me try and make a play. When you don't need to. That's not what you're supposed to do. You need to wait and group. You need to overwhelm with numbers. Because at the end of the day, I don't care how good any of these players are. If you're fighting them 2v1, they don't win that fight. But instead, the Jet here tried to take a fight with this, which was not a good idea. And then this guy was just a little more unfortunate. He just got ulted. But still, the idea kind of stands. We can kind of hear that ult, and then we can maybe assume that, hey, she could be CT potentially. Let's just wait. We have a few seconds to spare. It's not a big deal. Because right now, they had big man advantage, and they could have won the round, but now it's 3v3. And now it's 2v3, actually. So this is a good play by the Jet, picking up on the fact that he could still be here. And so you can see how these rounds really like spiral out of control, right? We see a lot of this happening in the pro scene, actually. Excuse me, one sec. But there's still like it's just not necessary. We just need to have people hanging out and chilling and stuff, like, and playing more together. We don't need to have people trying to make plays. That's not what we need to do. Obviously, there's room for plays. Don't get me wrong, but this is not the room for plays. It was 3v5, and now it's 2v3, and I'm pretty sure they just lose this round. Yep, they just end up trying to save. So, yeah, big mistake by Complexity here, trying to make unnecessary plays. I think they just sit back and play numbers advantage. Get info, same situation. So cool. Anyways, they're just regular old save. Gonna skip this next round once again because it was just I think it was an eco. I'm pretty sure they didn't force behind that. Yeah, so they just lost it. Cool. So they'll buy here, and that's where we're gonna go from. Okay, I actually almost ended up winning this round. I'm pretty sure, but this guy made a play. We could talk about that. So similar, same default, same setup they have going on, just defaults. So notice how, and this is the spot where the defenders are actually in an eco, so they're gonna actually be playing more aggressive. They're just gonna be going for stuff because they just kind of need to make stuff happen, right? In an eco, you can run specific strats and just try and play. You can't really play man advantage because even if you have a man advantage, you're outgunned, so you just lose. So this is where you kind of you need to go for plays. So you'll see a lot more pushing off of the defenders here, right? So that's a great shot by him. He just collapsed Caboose. Good. Now they're up a man. So this guy gets ult too. And so you notice this is actually bad by Envious to try and play a default here. Well, okay, that's not true. So the default's fine, but they need to be careful. They don't need to push off it. They need to play information, right? Because the reason you run a default on an eco is to make sure they don't stack. Because it seemed commonly, at least a lot in CS or Counter-Strike, maybe not so much in this game, people will stack sites based on just based on ecos, because what's going to happen is if you can gamble, have 5 people on a site and they end up pushing you, it's like now there's 5 of us to actually maybe make something happen. And so that's why I was kind of saying, hey, maybe we should set up default, but I think the setup's fine, but they don't need to actually go through with it. They need to play it very conservative because they can expect these defending players to be pushing up trying to make plays and just going for weird stuff. And that's kind of what happened, right? They caught them with their pants down right there. So not necessarily a huge mistake by FaZe, but it can lead to one if that were to spiral out of control more, which it kind of does here. At this point that they realize, they're still playing just regularly across the map, they're not stacked, they should instantly group and push. And I hope that's kind of what happens. Because at the end of the day, you could sit here and argue, we're not like they're arguing, but you can sit here and be like, yeah, we're trying to go for this, that, whatever. But there's no need to go for anything. Like, they're on a save, bro. Just take some fights, go for something stupid, whatever. So, anyways, cool. Another same exact situation. They went for 1v1s and they lost it. So now it's a 3v5. This is a bad look for Envious. Oopsies. So now they decide to group and push, I think. Oh, no, they don't. Maybe here? Yeah, now they decide to group and push. And let's watch what happens. I'll just stay on here. Let's just play from right here. So yeah, we notice how this happens. They start to overwhelm with numbers, and then but there's 3 on site. It was too late. They didn't have the numbers. So obviously, like I said, he had to end up winning this round, but so this was really well played by the Omen. But you can see my point, right? Like the attackers who all had guns versus defenders who had, I think, 1 or 2 guns maybe, all lost, or they could have easily lost this round. But instead, because they decided to push with a man, they didn't decide to push with the man advantage. They decided to push once they were down, and then just waited. So like I said, because this kind of explains the fact of set up a default, but that's it. Set it up, see what's going on, let the enemies push, and then we group and go. Because they did group and go, and they won the round because this guy went crazy. But notice he got 5 kills because he outgunned them all. He had a better weapon. Like, so why is one guy having to do that? Why don't we do that with just 5? So that was a pretty big mistake by FaZe. That's how you lose ecos. Or not FaZe, Envious, excuse me. I saw the FaZe down here. That threw me off. So, anyways, cool to break that down. But on to the next round. Now we have everybody having guns. But yeah, that's how well done by Complexity to do that. Kind of. They just kind of did what they're supposed to do, and then Envy just didn't. So now they're just going for a pretty basic. So this is where you'll start to see more juice happen after a good few rounds, because this is where we're starting to realize how they're playing the map, right? The Envious, the attackers have been like, okay, I've seen, we know that they're playing X person here. Let's try and set up around that. So this is where they decide to try to run a strat around that, and this is why we see 4 towards A, right? So Cypher cams it. I don't want to get into the util. That's just too much to track. So they're just playing info. They're shoulder peeking. Kind of gets caught there. I think overall that was bad. But by the I don't know. It wasn't bad. They do have to eventually peek this guy, or just shoulder for the info. But the idea still kind of stands. Like, it almost makes me feel like they should just smoke, expecting an op here, because they had money for an op, and ops are really good right now. So, anyways, but it does get traded. So this is actually a very risky play by FNS here, the Cypher, because if he repeaks, he probably just dies. But it might, at least it gets traded. But then you're traded with him, you're down a man, right? But he kind of expects him like, or he expects the Omen to be like, yo, he's probably not gonna repeak me because he knows that there's like 4 of us here, or 3, I guess. So if he repeaks, then he definitely dies, which is why you see him push out like this, because that's what he's expecting. And that's kind of what happens. And so good play. So he does not, he peeks this, and then the Cypher's there and catches him off guard. So well played by FNS there. That was good. And then we'll just see pretty basic post-plant stuff. So the Omen's gonna go for a flank. Notice what all's covered, right? Jet playing here, their back is covered. This is a tripwire from the attackers, so they don't have to worry about flank. All they have to worry about is ramp, heaven, and screens. So Jet sitting here covers both heaven, jump out, and ramp, and then him sitting here covers screens and kind of heaven. This is an interesting spot. It can kind of screw him over, but it leads for like good trades, right? Because if he takes contact with Sage, she can trade, blah blah blah, and then the Omen's making you play from behind, which is also good. So very basic post plant stuff. You don't need to go anything crazy. I think there's a tripwire there, which is why we don't see him do anything. So we see, yeah, good kills out of them. The envious players turned it into a 2v5 or 3v3, excuse me. I don't know what I'm talking about. Let me back up a second. Yeah, the NBA players turned into a 3v3 instead of a 3v5, which is good. So this is interesting. You're in a weird spot when you're in a 3v5 post plant, because the reality is you have to have all angles covered, but you also have to play together. And you're just strange, because it's like you got to do one. It's almost like you have to do one or the other. You can't have everybody in one spot watching different angles, because that's useless, right? So that's where it's like kind of weird. You typically want to avoid splitting up like this, but because the fact that they're down 2, oh, they're only down 1 actually. I'm on crack. Wait a minute, it's 4v4. Let me back up a second. Yeah, okay, I'm way out. Who's the extra? Okay, so Sage. I just didn't count Sage. Oopsies, disregard that. So okay, it's 4v4. So this is a little bit better then. That makes it make more sense. But it still can be kind of scary, because what happens is there's really no room for trades for the attackers, right? Or I guess technically defenders now, because it's post plant. And so we see that happen, right? They just get traded off. Key gets traded here. Technically not a trade. Anyways, there's a lot going on. This is too much to break down. Not really, but the whole point of this is what I'm like trying to. My point is what I'm trying to get at here is like you gotta really pay attention to how you play post plants, because there's the way that the technically defenders now, the envious, the attackers, but like I said, post planters. We'll just say post planters are playing this. There's no really room for trades, but they just kind of work the picks anyways, right? He kills him, and then Sage kills the heaven guy. So it works out in a way that it's higher level, because it's like not direct trades. It's not like there's another person behind him to trade this player, because with the Sage sitting here killing heaven guy, it makes this Jet right here. I should be drawing, shouldn't I? Yeah, like I said, I'm not used to this. It makes this Jet be scared. She can't just fully confidently swing Cypher here, because if she does, the Sage can actually kill her, which is why we actually see her back up here. Oh, wait, she doesn't back up. Okay, so then once again, she doesn't back up because she knows this Sage is here, right? So Sage takes the fight here, wins it. Now she swings and takes the fight. So now there's a 2v1. And so anyways, the whole point, I don't need to break down all this. My point of this is you can see how pro players like actually try and work angles, and how it's still kind of flawed, but it also has good reasoning behind it. And that's counterintuitive, I know, but basically you can kind of watch how these pro players play angles and think about what they're doing it and why. And so yeah, that was overall an okay post plant. I think it could have been a little better, but they just kind of won their fights overall. So cool. All right, we're gonna skip to I think the middle here. I think complexity starts to make a little bit of a comeback. Yeah, so they get their first round. Good. We don't need to talk about that round. I just want to understand that they have momentum now. Okay, what did we miss? We missed the good stuff. Okay, round's about to start. Same thing, just a basic default basically happening right here. So this is a quirky play by once again, notice how at the start I was talking about going for picks. This is good by these two, right? So they have it set up where they can't just barrel out mid in theory. And so the Jet right here is going for a pick, and the Sage has the wall instantly behind it. So what happens is if he gets the pick, which he does, let's see it happen. Gets the pick, right? So he gets this, Sage instantly walls. So the way it works is if he gets the kill, Sage walls, so he can't be traded, right? The Raze can't be traded. She just dies, and now it's a man advantage. And then also, if Jet were to die, the Sage can ult or can wall and then ult and get him back alive. And it's like, okay, we lost that. But this is the high risk, high reward people have to go. That pro players have to go for. So that's good. Good by them. This is a good little push, and it nets them a kill. So now they can rotate accordingly. So you notice how the Sage is coming to help out mid, and then the Omen can go back this way to pull numbers this way, because at the end of the day, they don't know where people are. They can just expect these players are pushing. And so, yeah, overall good. So he gets the frag on the him. Onto the Cypher. Excuse me. And then, yeah, pretty basic setup from here. Once again, this is bad. They're starting to push. They're starting to try and get kills. This is not what we want to do. It works out, but that's bad. In general, this is a bad push, because this is we have numbers. We just play info. We literally shoulder peek everywhere for info. Figure out where they are. Okay, yo, there's Omen mid. Oh, yo, hey, Jet's A. It's like they're split up. Now we just play numbers. So this is bad by complexity. Like I said, it works out, so it looks like it's fine, but that's technically what we don't want to do. So, and that's because we saw how it almost went disastrous that one round. So this is a quirky little play by Mummy. I'm just gonna call Mummy. Let's go. Well, we'll say the Jet here, because she's like, the Cypher's not gonna, or the Omen's not gonna expect me to push past his smoke, and he wasn't. You see his crosshair was looking this way, but because the angle is just tight, it's not a very difficult flick, and he misses the shot anyways. So interesting play. This is actually kind of good by the Jet here, because at this point they kind of have to go for plays because they're just down people, and so yeah, that's good. I'm assuming they just have friendly BM going on there, I guess. I don't know. So goodbye Raze here. Just trying to make stuff happen. That's kind of the best you can do. And once again, we see them, well, we need to see them back off and just kind of play info, right? So that's what they do. He hears them ropes. He's like, yo, one coming ropes. And then these players are moving around the map accordingly. Sorta. They actually end up going for the res here to ensure the round. I think that's pretty good. Gets to pick on her. They hear the Sage Heaven, or they know the Sage is Heaven. They're just going to hold it. And, yep, that's it. So, a good round by Calm overall. They kind of just had to go for plays, though. The attackers did. So, yeah, that's good. I think I'm actually going to turn this into just attacking side. Or just one side of the map. Because we're talking about both sides here. And it's just a lot to discuss in one video. Because we're 30 minutes in and we're on round like 7 or 8. So, too much. So, anyways, cool. Let's just go ahead and get into the next. So same thing, the usual we're watching here. So this is where it's starting to, things are starting to shake up, because what's going on here is, it's kind of hard to break down, because what the attackers are doing is still running a default, trying to pick up on their movement, because what's happening is Complexity's moving around the map to keep these guys like confused. Because if they always played 2A and gave up mid-heaven, they would pick up on it supposedly, and they would run over. They would just go fly through it. So that's why we see them resetting back to defaults here. But this is really bad by Raze, because first of all, we don't need to. In my opinion, we don't need to push this, right? So I think what she wants to do is just play her angle and try and pull pressure towards this side of the map. Because what happens is, in theory, right, the defenders spot this Raze. She comes around this corner. She gets spotted right here. That pulls more than likely pressure this way. So it's going to require the Raze to be like, yo, there's 1B main. And they don't actually know if there's 5 there. Because if Jet sees only 1, and then that requires them to have, that's going to force rotates in theory. Because they don't know that there's 5. She sees 1, she backs off. That keeps her life alive, but we don't know who else is there. So they're forced to rotate, in theory. They could just freaking be ballsy and just stay where they are, expecting there to only be 1. So, but the reason so overall this isn't terrible, but the reason it's bad is because we know Jet was consistently at B. She's been there the past few rounds, and he just walked into an op, like, right? That's bad. So yeah, and once again we see some more plays going through by the defenders. These big picks are huge, so now it's like, okay, now we once again have man advantage. And we should, in theory, be saying the same stuff. Yes, exactly. At this point, the attackers just got to kind of go for plays. Like, they don't have much of a choice here. They can try and group and push, but if the complexity plays it correct, there's no way they win this round because they have big man advantage. They just back up, either back up and give sight or just play trades. Because at this point, if there's a trade for every kill, the defenders just win out because they have a man advantage. And that's kind of the big thing I probably should have touched more on in the start of the VOD, is that's why you get these man advantage picks, because in pro play, trades are much more common. You see trades happen more, and like that's how you play around people. So if you have a man advantage, if you always get trades, you will just win out. That's just how the math is. It's 5v4, everybody trades, it's now 1v0, right? So that's why you see these players starting to try and make plays, because they don't have much of a choice here. Because if they just group and push, they just lose. So decent play here. They just had a good little crossfire setup. And yep, once again, they just all run for plays, right? So now we're starting to see this stuff fall apart. And once again, you see them rotating around the map. They're moving the op around. Now they're probably thinking, hey, there's an op or B. He's been there the past 2 rounds. Let's not push B. Let's push towards A. And that pressure is just kind of slightly alleviated, right? They're going to go back to pulling Cypher alone. Good plays by the pros overall. Or good plays by, what's it called? Complexity. Good job of them moving around. This is, once again, this is okay. They're kind of going for that last strat they did where they cross over 2 and 2, and they could just push as 1, in like one big group here like this. That was just abysmal. Let's just act like that didn't happen. Let's try and draw this again. Like they push 2 here and 2 here. There we go. That's better. And so they just flood in. Instead of pushing 4 from here into that way, they can flood them all in. It's just a little bit quirky, but the Cypher screwed up his FNS, messed up his cage, leaves a gap, and gets him killed. Same thing. Once again, it's like, okay, shoot. Now we're down a man. So you see how these this is why like these picks are so big, because the past 3 rounds that they've won they've been picks. They get an early pick and they go from there. It just snowballs. So you can see why this clumsy play, these things in pro play matter. That one gap in that Cypher thing could have potentially just lost them the whole round, because it led to a pick, which leads to just overall bad play, right? I'm just spray through him smoke. That's pretty good. Once again, a mistake by complexity. They're just pushing as 1. It seems like it works out, but this is bad overall. Now, unless I'm just missing something because it's muted, and for the record, I can't hear comms, so stuff like this could be happening properly. But maybe this raise is like throwing util or something to pull them looking this way. I don't know. But the reality is, if Mummy's a little more prepared and just has his op scoped, which he should, because it doesn't make a noise, then he just dies here. And now the numbers are pulled slightly more into their advantage, right? The reason why is the reality is it's boring to do that, right? It's like we get a man advantage. I don't want to just sit around. Like I want to go kill people or shoot. You know, it's what you want to do. That's gonna happen all the time. But the truth is, that's not what you should be doing. Because that's how you can lose rounds. So good play by Calypso here, the Omen, and yeah. So we're starting to see some consistent things here. They're playing defaults. They're starting to get. I guarantee they reset back to default. Oh, it's Nico, so maybe not. We're gonna skip this round, like I said. But in theory, they'll probably reset back to a default here to figure out where they're playing once again. And so this is why, because defaults in theory don't just win you rounds. Like you're not just gonna play default and win, right? Like you can if you just have everybody go crazy and the defenders make crazy mistakes and they just peek everything and you just die, right? But typically they're not gonna want to have that happen. Default is really only for info, and that's why we see them run defaults quite a lot, and why they've only effectively ran a strat based on what I can see and tell and like hear like twice, right? Every other round has just been basically pushing for info. And they've only run just dedicated strats, especially at A, where they just did that double setup once, right? Or twice now. So I just repeated myself. But yeah, this is good by complexity, keeping them guessing. Because if in pro play, if they just know where people are, they just run at them. They just win. You can just set up strats against them all the time. Because the way, especially in a game with a bunch of utility like this one, all you have to do is have really good utility, like usage, combos, and just synergy. And like you can always overwhelm a site. But the reason you can't just do that because the defenders are moving around, because it's like, okay, if they just double op A and we're not ready for it, we just lose, sort of a thing, right? So that's why you have to play default. I sort of picked the map apart again. So we see very similar things happening here. Oh, this is a Nico. I was gonna skip this. That's right. Yeah, so like I was kind of confused why they were just trying to make plays, but yeah, that's why. Yep. So like I said, they should win this round. They're outgunned. All that good stuff. I should not have skipped that for. Maybe I should have. Whatever. Okay, perfect. So yeah, same thing. Just moving around the map. So I'm gonna start skipping through the rest of this VOD pretty quickly. At least this half, because of the whole. We're just seeing consistent. This is how pro play works. This is the basic stuff of it. If I'll eventually make videos where I talk about the strats they run and talk about the control, but this is basic pro play. This is what happens. You just get info and you work accordingly, and we'll start to see little plays happen. So I think this is an example of why this is a good play, because they're not expecting the Jet to be here, and this is why Jet is actually pretty powerful in this meta. Because you can't just push up an agent to here and have nothing happen. He can go for the shot, get it or miss, and then just dash out. And he's like, okay, good, we're fine. No big deal. It's cool. And now they actually know the Opera's here. So that's why we see the Rays rotate around. They're like, okay, we might expect mid control. And then same with this. When the Omen gets info, this is risky. But, you know, like I was talking about earlier, it's just map pressure, right? So that's why I think this game has really good potential for really good professional play, because you can make these little plays like this so much more with the use of ult, utility, just overall stuff like that. Caboose is just not having a good half. So this is an example of trying to play make a little too much. Like, I mean, in theory it's not, because like you ult up, you see it blast this guy, it's like, yo, he's low, that should be a free kill. But you also just can't bank on it, and then also you don't know who's here, so he just rotates up and picks him off. Same exact situation. They're now down. If Complexity plays this right, which they have, they just win man advantage, and that's all there is to it. So we'll watch this last round over, and I actually think I'll call the VOD here, because we're going to see the very similar things. It's not like I'm not talking about whole, like, specific strats that they're running or anything like that. I'm just talking about basic pro play stuff. And so cool. That's kind of the gist of it. I'll probably watch pro play, like actual like live gameplay soon-ish, and we can break down like specific strats. So this was interesting. Good little jump peaks. But this is an example of the setting up default. So when you set up a default, it's not always just you have somebody watching this, somebody watching this, somebody watching this, or I guess different players, like 2 here, 1 here, 2 here, whatever the case may be, right? You could default towards the side of the map. So this is an example of a B side default, because what happens is they're not just setting up for it instantly like a strat here. I mean, they might be, but I feel like they're just defaulting, right? They're trying to get control. This is kind of map pressure. They're trying to get control of this spot, because it's going to have to pull defenders this way, and it's also going to have, they're just going to have control of it. That's less for them to have to worry about, right? Because right now, we can go back to that example of like they have this. Oopsies, that's not a straight line. Right now, the map is this, in theory, kind of like screwed up here, right? But they want to go for this. And that little bit is big, because what's going to happen is these few seconds is going to pull these players this way. So anyways, whole point of this is kind of just the point, right? And so yeah, good pick by them, and we're gonna see if they jump on this instantly or if they move around, right? So Sage is gonna slow, and she's gonna go for pick here. That pick right there is it's pretty risky, because if she dies, they have B. But kind of an example of going back to that man advantage thing. You kind of have to make plays, and that's kind of what we see happen here. So good by her, kind of risky but good, I think, overall. And we'll see her trying to make plays again with the Rays stuff. And so yeah, this once again very basic pro stuff. Sorry, 1 minute. And so yeah, cool. This is good by them. And then they also work the res off, so make plays around that to get this player up and ready to go. So we're gonna see this player die. There's a nade going in, and there's Jet knives going in. So this is good by Jet here to pick up on that. Just walk in there and blast your knives. So we're going to see them kind of reset. Now it's even, right? And we can kind of, this is where they can start to just overwhelm with man advantage. But now we're starting to see this is a little more unique. We're starting to see these defenders push for the pressure once again, because now it's like we can 100% assume that they're here, right? Now the map's cut like this, or I guess it'd be more like this, technically, because they don't have control of any of this up here. So this is good. This is good by them. To push this. They're playing aggro. They're trying to make stuff happen. So I say this is good. It has risks, but overall, this is kind of something unique you can do. This is something you can do in your solo queue games. Pick up on what's going on, and they probably heard them run out, so they just walk behind them. And so yeah, now that they're like yo, they're gonna be going A, and then they get to pick on the lurker. Not necessarily bad map awareness by the Omen, but overall not the best. He should have kind of been wary that they might push them after that, but cool. Now they're once again trying to make plays. That was bad, but that's bad by the Cypher there. That's too bad of a play. And yeah, same thing. So cool. This is basic pro play. We don't need to talk about a whole lot else. All it is running defaults, figuring out what's going on, and stuff like that. So I think the big things that we see here is Complexity actually does a really good job at rotating their plays around the map. So props to them for that. They have a little bit of too many playmakers, and we see it a lot of that on FaZe because sometimes we'll see them go for plays that aren't necessary. But as far as I'm not like breaking down specific strats, this is just basic things that I'm seeing as the coach, the outside coach. And then also the attackers are bad at getting picked off. They need to be a little more wary of the way that they need to be wary of the fact that they're moving around, and maybe go for like some pushes as a group, right? Maybe be like, okay, there's an opper here. I'm gonna jet dash across and then pull the pressure away, even if it pushes that opper back. Whenever like, here, let me draw it on there. I keep forgetting I can draw. Like if opper's here looking this way, if I just jet dash into here, into B main, I'm abysmal at drawing, but that's fine. Maybe that opper just has to fall back to site, and that's cool. Now we have control, right? So I think that's something that Envious could be working on more, because they're just kind of pushing, they're just kind of playing the game solo, it feels like, and that's why they ended up losing this half really. That's why they ended up having the defenders make a big comeback, right? Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it. If you guys like this stuff, let me know. Just leave a comment on what else you want to see from me. And yeah, that's pretty much going to be it. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.